I started this MA with a very clear idea of what I was going to explore. My vision was to create these impressive architectural spaces painted only from memory. Memories of places that no longer existed, based on the houses which I no longer had access to, because they had all been destroyed and redeveloped into marble-cladded apartment buildings. I was really looking to prove my skills while also making use of my architectural background. But I quickly felt lost and what I was producing wasn't lining up with what I had envisioned. So I started referring back to archival images from old family photo albums. Something that I had previously been doing in my practice, layering photographs on top of memories or mixing the photographs with objects from my room. I'm painting my memories to ease my nostalgia. A few months into the course, my mum discovered over 1,000 images from a 2003 summer trip we took to Iran on an old hard drive. These images were untouched for almost 20 years. They became the content for my next series of paintings. Alex Bacon, in his essay entitled Surface Image Reception, Painting in a Digital Age, concludes in essence that what holds true today is the notion of painting as a frame. My joint passion for painting, photography and film come to the frame. It's my compositional aid. It helps create focus for the viewer. I started using old frames that I would find in charity shops as a cropping tool for the low-res digital images. I loaded the pictures I wanted to paint onto my iPad and I would put the frames up to the screen and start flicking through the pictures. The frames were a layout tool for the strips of primed canvas, bridging the gap between the digital and the analogue. This led to the creation of Iran 2003. I've always been obsessed with the idea of creating something new. A naive thought, but I definitely think I sparked something new for myself with this book. It was my first experience making my paintings into objects. I decided to start a second book. With the second book, I wanted to expand this idea of framing and cropping by creating multiple variations in the size of the canvas strips that I would later bind together, so that when you flip through the book, you would see paintings peeking through. Each spread would become a composition of fragments, a collage of paintings, layers of moments resting on top of one another. Flicking through the book felt as if I was travelling through a city of memories, these windows into a world familiar but different to the one we're in today. But like a city, it was crowded, and some of the paintings did not have the room to breathe. I chose to show it at our summer degree show in Wilson's Road. I laid out the books on some shelves I made from an old school desk, because I thought about how I mostly remember these moments when I'm in a setting I don't want to be in. A decision I made hastily and one that I probably wouldn't repeat. The books were accompanied by the empty frames that made them, along with paintings I had done from the imagined spaces, and also YouTube videos of people walking in Tehran, something I used to watch during lockdown to soothe my nostalgia. The following day I had a crit with artist Simon Callery. He asked me, "What do you want your audience to see first?" I said the books. He said that perhaps I'm hiding, and all the noise on the walls show a lack of confidence. This got me thinking about presentation, and I definitely set up this way as an anxiety response. Small so I don't have to worry about transportation, hidden in a book that I can keep wrapped in parchment under my desk, displayed on the wall like this because I didn't want to take up space. Now I think it's a shame that I didn't give these paintings the room to breathe. I realised that a lot of the force behind my practice is rooted in fear. Fear of losing, fear of forgetting, fear of showing fear. Eckhart Tolle says that fear is the biggest obstacle in the way of the present. Then I went back to Iran in July and something changed. This whole time I was longing for my subject, looking back with a distant gaze, painting with references I could only view through a screen. Then I found myself always one step behind the present, constantly trying to be present but documenting to the point that I would still experience the moment through a screen, trying to capture as much source material and evidence as I could. It's interesting how in court cases the witness's account is valid although it's just memory. And because that memory can change and isn't entirely reliable, there is a practice of memory refreshing, where the witness can read their testimony before they speak in court. In a way, this trip was a memory refresh for me. During the first week of the trip, I was invited by a friend to paint at this live audio-visual graffiti event held in a villa in a western district of Tehran. The title of the event was Eshkal Ashkal, which translates to shapes, problems. The building was going through a period of renovation, and the owner was renting it out as a creative space while it was in this stage of construction. The space had a lot of texture. I was thinking about Simon Callery's feedback, and I wanted to give my small paintings a lot of space, and they would be something that you would have to look for to find. I had taken one very small frame with me in my box of paints. I decided that I was only allowed to use the outer frame, the inner frame, and the glass as my 3 size variations for the paintings. I painted in response to the walls and the graffiti that covered them. I thought about this interior space that was in the state of transition. In the midst of its refurbishment, we had the opportunity to create a moment. I thought about all the houses I missed, the ones turned into dust, and how now I was able to leave my mark around all this rubble and irresolution. I painted views from the streets, from a catalogue of photographs I had taken in my previous trip to the country in 2019. Since the graffiti, which is usually found in exterior settings, had entered the interior, domestic realm, I thought it would be nice to show these interior walls the views from outside. I came at a good moment, as all the graffiti artists had gone, so I could respond to their work as well as the layout of the space. I approached the space as I did the books, except now I had less say in the forms I painted on, and that was better for me. The paintings on the walls became portals. I wanted to paint these pictures because I wanted more people to see them, activating the past in a forever state of presence activated by the eye of the viewer. Is this graffiti? What separates this work from graffiti? First, the absence of letters. There is no one visual identity. It can't be classed as a mural, because murals are large and take up space to convey a certain message. No, these are portals, small windows into the past, my past. In writing The Memory of the City, a book about the graffiti scene in Berlin, graffiti artist Nick writes, I sit at my desk and try to process things that have happened. A painful thought, a joyful memory, something that carries a driving power in itself. The deeper the sensation, the more powerful is the image that I generate. When the image is completed, the moment is extinguished, and the image is now only a transmitter of the sensation that once existed. After the day of the event, I never went back, and now all that exists from those paintings are the photographs I took of them. I came back to the UK and started working on my next set of pages for the unfinished memory photo album. When I was painting the pictures from 2003, I used light washes of acrylic to build up the image. As I started painting my own pictures just a week after I got back from Iran, I noticed that I was using thick applications of paint, heavy with the emotions I felt for the recent past, and the reality of my return to England. I think the moments were too soon for me to start painting them with any satisfaction. For now, the book remains unfinished, but I plan to take it apart in the future and rework it. When I got back into college and showed my tutors the photographs of my paintings from the event in Iran, they were all really excited by the work. I hadn't really taken into consideration that what I did there could be done again. But first I started a new set of paintings on stretched canvas. I wanted to paint from the mobile video footage that I took in Iran. The phone, a tool I use every day. It's interesting how it travels with me. It's been to Iran and back and accompanies me on every trip across the world. I created a series of canvases that had the same aspect ratio as an iPhone video. As I previously mentioned, I paint directly on the canvas and build the shapes as I see them. This strengthens my eye-to-hand connection. In this shape/colour blocking process, I like to think of myself as an AI algorithm on a site like Night Cafe, slowly rendering the image as I gather more information. My plans for this series of paintings was to animate them, to paint each frame on top of the last layer, painted on the same piece of canvas, photographing each frame to create a stop-motion-like animation. This is a reflection on the creation of any painting, as painting is an art form whose process is hidden under layers of paint, only present in the artist's memory. Here, the layers would represent the literal passing of time. Right now, these paintings have become too precious, and I want to take my time developing them after I finish the course. While I was working on these canvas paintings, I decided to start painting on the freestanding movable walls that made up my studio space. My new surroundings created a new contextual meaning for these paintings. To paint them in college meant I could create these portals of sentimental moments for myself and get reminded of them as I worked in the studios. A new audience had a chance to engage with these moments that came from 3,000 miles away. I decided not to try and recreate that moment in Iran, but instead try and respond to this new space that I found myself in, starting with a picture of a bit of litter on the ground, taken during a hike to the mountains above Tehran 2 days prior to my return. This hike has almost become accustomed to my departure. A tradition started with my friends in 2014. During this hike, you can see Tehran from a distance, symbolic to the reality that awaits me just a few days after. And so this sentiment of departure, of the closing of this summer chapter of Iran, is the first wall painting I decided to paint back in England. The khak, dirt of Iran on my studio wall. What's so striking to me about these wall paintings is that you don't know which marks have been left by my paintbrush and which already belong to the wall. The second painting was of a picture from the beginning of the trip. On the first day, we travelled 3 hours straight into the desert for my cousin's wedding. I love all the Iranian graphics you see on the road, especially at night when they cause horrible light pollution that eats up any chances to see the stars above. I painted this on the wall next to the sink. I felt that if it was a bit out of the way, then there would be less chance of it being covered up. The sink is a space that I would frequent daily. so it made sense to put it somewhere that was part of my studio routine. This image was taken in a moving car, yet it is so clear and vivid. When I look at the iPad screen in this video, the matte screen protector makes the image look like a painting. So what's the point of painting it? Well, the difference is, once I swipe left, then the image will be gone back to lay dormant in its void until activated again. Each stage of the painting is beautiful, and it's a shame that the viewer only gets to see the final layers. So it was important for me to document the second round of wall paintings, to show and archive the process. That's really the only data I would have left once I've been kicked out of the college. Then I moved into the sculpture studios, a place where I collaborated with my peers and produced one of my favourite paintings. I noticed the colours of the freshly painted floors and the smoothness of the texture. It had painterly marks from the layers upon layers of colour that have been placed to refresh it each new school year. A chain-link fence on the wall, a skyline on the floor. The scenic drive under the radiator was very fitting, I thought. I mimicked the paint marks of the floor reaching the walls and the fluidity of the mountain roads. The fire alarm went off as I was painting my mum looking out of the window. I came back the next day and I decided to leave it as it was. I reacted to this space similarly as I had to the set of paintings I had left in Iran, using the whole space in my compositional layout of each portal. Francis Worrell Campbell writes about Paul B. Preciado's essay, My Trans Body is an Empty House, saying he recalls a rental home in Athens that he refused to furnish. Without anything to block its path, his body moves freely through the property, liberated from the habitual encounters with objects and appliances. Every experience still novel, singular. The refusal to settle in or down eases the writer's unsettled embodiment. Although my issues with nostalgia aren't as heavy or comparable to the trans experience, this way of life led by Preciado resonated with me in this new fragment of my practice. The lack of canvas gives me a sense of freedom. My displacement from my motherland, no longer bound to be expressed on a portable surface, one that will follow me and force me to find its storage solutions in my already overcrowded room. Now I have the freedom to be present and to immerse myself in my surroundings and then let go and move on to a new space. After painting and sculpture, I came back down to paint another piece in the painting studios. This time the windows of this dilapidated building in Jordan, one that I would pass every time I went to visit my friends in the area. I thought it would be nice to place it next to a window because the view from the windows of the studios were usually dreary and grey. It's funny how looking into these empty black windows of this old building brings me a feeling of warmth. I could now be transported there every day in the studio. During the documentation process, I liked making the lens zoom in close to the painting on the walls so that it almost looked like a video taken from the scene itself. The camera became a cropping agent that allowed me to teleport into the painting through the screen of the viewfinder. This back and forth from eye to screen to eye to screen to hand to wall to eye to screen to eye created visual reverbs in time. I found this theatre paint which had been used by the BA students to cover our studio floors during their degree show. I really liked how it felt to peel it off the floor. Peeling paint is a habitual act I do at the start of any painting, cleaning off the old acrylic from my palette. I hold on to any of the pieces that look interesting to use as collage material or general inspirations for new paintings. I happened upon a half-full tub, so I took it and used it to paint in the frame outlines that I made on my studio wall. Once dry, I could paint onto it, painting from the images I took on my phone in Iran. I peeled the paintings off the wall, and they became pure paint, a bit of thin plastic. I liked making people hold and feel these paintings, how light and inconspicuous they were. I spoke with fellow classmate Fergus Channon, who gave me the idea to cast them in cement, to return these paintings to the wall, to create a sense of solidity. You can have a piece of me ripped out of the wall of my soul, a moment I have so desperately tried to hold on to make solid once again. These moments captured by the camera transferred onto the wall in front of me. There is no buffer in the shape of a canvas. The painting becomes the space and the space becomes the painting, and then peeled back into its paint form, paint representing an ethereal agent who accompanies me in my journey of understanding, my tool for telling. When the painting is pure paint, then it can be swept by the wind and escape from me easily. Therefore I try and cement it once again, constantly at a tug of war with form as I am with myself in trying to relive the past and also let it go. Once cast in concrete, the paintings become a portable object, one that I can place in the hands of others, and if dropped can smash. This solid form is both hardy and fragile in the hand of the viewer and their intentions. All this studio work led to our final MA Fine Art show, Touch/Factory showed works from across all pathways and was held in both Copeland Gallery and Dilson Gallery simultaneously. I proposed to paint onto the walls of the gallery and respond to the space as well as the artwork of my peers. I made the important decision not to paint onto the peelable paint. Painting on it is a different experience to painting straight onto the wall. The texture of the theatre paint causes the paint to slide, which creates a different style of painting. When I paint onto the wall, there is so much grip, and the paint gets absorbed into all the grooves and caverns in the wall. It's nicer to play with those textures, and I wanted there to be no barrier with the wall and the image. I also wanted the image to be gone, to not get attached and have to carry them with me after the event. The concrete cast peel paintings became so delicate and something to worry about. I transported them home in a book before casting them, and one of the works got stuck to the paper and it damaged the painting. I also proposed to have one small stretched painting on canvas in the show. This is the image I decided to paint. I think it encompasses everything I'm trying to say with the work I've been producing throughout the year. My uncle in the image passed away a year and a half ago. He spent most of his life disabled since he contracted polio in early childhood and lost all sensation in his legs. In the recent years of his life, he lived in a first-floor flat in a half-finished apartment building that he was conned into living by his wife's niece's husband. They got loans on 2 to 3 properties, amounting to $1 million in total, and now live a luxury life in the States. Before this land was soiled, he had a lovely traditional Persian house, ground floor so he could independently access the outside. But here there was no lift, and even the stairs were still base concrete blocks that you had to climb carefully. He was basically a prisoner in his own home, one that he originally sold for a better future. He spent his days next to the window you see in this picture, listening to the radio that's in front of him and reading every now and then. Everything he used for his escape surrounding him in one image, yet he never had a single complaint. I relate this picture of staring through the window to the street to my own experience of staring through the screen to the videos of the people walking the streets. The glass of the window versus the glass of the screen, both a transparent barrier framing a limited view. My father has told me stories of how my uncle would create worlds in his head to escape into and live. He had whole fantasies that he was preoccupied with. As I grow older, I'm more and more inspired by my uncle. So what does it mean to paint an image on a canvas versus the wall? I have my uncle on canvas. This creates something to keep. Next to him on the wall, I painted an image of a woman walking from behind, walking away from the viewer, further into this portal, one that I knew I would have to destroy. But it meant that I felt more sentimental to it. It forced me to really look at what I created, because soon it would no longer exist. I also painted some sentimental sceneries, as well as my pet duck from when I was 13. I painted a picture of my brother taken in the same room that my uncle was sitting in. But I decided not to paint his flesh, as the fate of these paintings were to be destroyed, sanded, and painted over. These memories merged with my present, as I used them to respond to the artworks of my peers. I also painted in the bathrooms. I claim them as graffiti and have left them there so they can be part of the future exhibitions. This whole exhibition, I was asked how I feel about painting over my wall paintings. This is what I wrote in my notes. I've been sanding them down for the past hour, and I don't know how I've felt. I've been more busy documenting it than feeling its absence. And that's also true for how I experienced my Iran trip. At some points I was so busy documenting that I didn't get to experience it. Or there was a sense that the documentation was more important, so that I have proof that it happened, and I could show it to others. This was the first time I would be destroying these wall images. It was a somber moment, rainy and grey outside. I thought about the mathematician Charles Babbage, born 1791, who saw every past event as a disturbance that reordered atomic matter. This thought gave me a sense of calm. The paintings were now a part of the history of the walls of the gallery, the dust now part of the area, and the remnants of paint hidden somewhere behind the layers of white emulsion, now one with the building, embedding my personal past into Copeland Gallery. These images travelled through me, from my eyes to the camera, from the screen through my eyes, from my eyes to my hand, to the wall. Something special happened at this exhibition. The viewers of the paintings became like me. Only they have seen the works in real life. The rest is all memory, wiped away and sanded into dust, now only able to be viewed through a screen. All that is left is a photograph of a painting of a photograph. Like a memory, it comes and goes. These photographs I took with my camera, I then filmed with my phone. These devices constantly cycle in my practice, looping through pixels to paint and back again. In more recent times, the phone has become a trauma device. I switch it on and instantly tap Instagram to see horrible pictures of dead children and blood-stained roads. And this pain that I'm feeling now is shared by millions of Iranians across the world, and we are all witnessing these horrible images together. I hope that soon this will all be a memory and there will be peace. Throughout the duration of this course, my motivations for creating have always remained the same: to bring the past into the present so that I can leave it in the past, as the past always felt like a haunting spirit, tormenting me, preventing me from enjoying the present. The context of this past I am referring to is my childhood moments spent in Iran, and the present I try to escape is my life in England. I am now beginning to realise that my real goal is to find a sense of home. The word nostalgia, Greek in origin, translates to the grief for the lost charm of the native land. In my research, I came across a journal article by Sarah Ahmed, entitled Home and Away, Narratives of Migration and Estrangement, in which she explores the notion of the word home for global nomads. She says, and I quote, "The narrative of leaving home produces too many homes, and hence no home. Too many places in which memories can attach themselves, and hence no place in which a memory can allow the past to reach the present." She continues to explain that a sense of fixity can be found for these diasporic individuals in the communities of people who share the same state of homelessness, and there, through talks of the past, of the native land, a sense of home can be found. Perhaps this feeling of home for me has always come from talking about past moments, the ones me and my friends from Tehran International School shared in the late 2000s. And so, in the paintings I produce, I am recreating the effect that ultimately brings me the feeling of being at home. So when I paint these portals in my surroundings, I'm trying to instill a sense of home. Bringing these snapshots of the past into the present which I inhabit creates a sense of home, which is something that I'm longing for, and the thing that I was trying to do was to bring my past into the present, to leave my past behind. But the past is my home, and by bringing it into the present, I am doing something more important to soothe these feelings, as I am creating a home for myself, the same way certain birds surround themselves with jewels in their nest. I recognise that what I'm trying to paint now from photographs is only a moment of a memory, and is not necessarily attached to a sequential moment that my brain has chosen to keep. Therefore, moving forward, I will be diving more into this unknown space, this space that only I have access to. I now alleviate this pressure I've placed upon myself to paint from pure memory. I won't be adverse to picking from the photographs themselves in aid of creating the scenes that I want to show. Lastly, and more importantly, I want to shout out to all the brave women, men and children of Iran. I hope I have the energy to paint something in response to this historic moment soon. Zan Zendegi Azadi.